Welcome to the Emancipation Nation podcast. This week, it's my pleasure to have Dave. I'm sorry, I'm going to start over, Dev. Okay.
Sure, no worries. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Welcome to the Emancipation Nation podcast. This week, we have Dev Tandon on, and he has 20 years, almost 20 years experience. He went to Princeton, graduated in 2000, and did like the corporate trajectory. He wanted to work at McKinsey global consulting firm, and that's sort of what you do, as I understand it. That's, you go to Harvard, you go to Princeton, you go to Yale, and you want to work for this global consulting firm. And Dev did that. He was on the trajectory to, financial world greatness and whatever the world calls someone a financial success. And he stopped. He took a moment and he stepped back, and using his creativity, his skill, his talent, his heart, he built a global organization that is still continuing to grow. He is doing fantastic things. And I was lucky enough to meet him and get connected to him. And I'm so happy that I did, because he has taught me a lot of things already. So I'm so happy to have him today. So welcome, Deb. I'm so happy that you're able to join us.
It's so great to be here, Celia. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, and so you're one of those California people, and up and coming.
Now, at this stage in my life, I am, yes, yeah. Although I grew up in the middle, I grew up near you in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio.
And you had the good sense to go to better weather. But so why is it, you say people, they make their money first, and then, a few of them decide to then do some good work for humanity. But why do you say that might not be the right trajectory? Why do you say that?
Well, of course, we as a society, right, have been taught that money is, you pursue money and then you'll be fulfilled, right? And many of us who have been on that kind of rat race sort of path, right, have discovered through firsthand experience that it's simply not the case. I mean, now that's not to say that money is not important, right? I mean, of course we need, a base level of money to be able to survive, to put roofs over our heads and to eat. But, as I'm sure Celia, right, there have been literally hundreds of psychological research studies that have been done that, after a human being's basic needs, physical needs are met, that, incremental dollars on top of that really don't bring incremental happiness. Mm-hmm. And so, some of us kind of know that earlier on, and I would imagine a bunch of folks in the audience here, just because of the nature of the work that you all are doing, the important work in this world, have already discovered that. And then there are others, I think, who have to go through that path of the rat race to finally then wake up and say, wow, like I did achieve whatever modicum of success that I wanted to, set out to achieve, but it really didn't make a big difference on how I feel on a day-to-day basis. When I close my eyes, am I comfortable with myself? In fact, I was less comfortable with myself, after going down this path of, kind of the worldly success, if you will, than I am even today, and doing what I'm doing now. So, these are all things that we've heard in various different, from various different perspectives and angles. But when one has that experience firsthand, it really kind of changes everything.
Yeah. And so what, tell me about that process of going from, the trajectory that you were on to stopping and forming this OBO movement, which I'm going to ask you about. But tell me about that process of kind of shifting your entire paradigm.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I graduated, as you mentioned, in 2000 and, went to McKinsey and, spent the next 18 years, kind of in traditional corporate America. And, the reality was, even though I was fine, I was providing for my family, I wasn't truly happy on the inside. I wasn't fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And so, I kind of grinded it out. I heard a phrase the other day that it was my zone of excellence, right? Like I was, mm-hmm. So many of us are able to grind it out and be excellent in a field, even though it might not be truly our life's calling, right? Mm-hmm. And you contrast that with your zone of genius, right? Which is, when folks like us, any of us, right, tap into our zone of genius, it's just the amount of impact that we can have on the world is so much greater. And so while I was in this pursuit of my zone of excellence, I was also on a simultaneous path, kind of doing a whole bunch of self-improvement and self-realization work, which included everything from, meditation to yoga to therapy to retreats to body work to seminar. I mean, you name it, right? I have done it, and I continue to actually do it. And what happened was about 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, those two worlds, as they often do, came colliding together, right? And I just woke up and looked around, and after 20 years almost in traditional corporate America, I was just like, what is going on? Right? I mean, like, what have we as a society created here? What monstrosity of a system, are we operating in right now, right? Where the pursuit of the almighty dollar has literally, I mean, if it's not the root cause of everything that we are seeing in the world today, including, much of the work that you all do in your industry, then it's pretty close to it, right? And I know you and I, Celia, have talked before about, the role that business plays in the human trafficking industry, which is just pitiful and sorrowful. I mean, just so many different ways we can go off on a tangent, on that. But this was kind of the set of realizations that I came to through this process.
Wow. And so how did you come about the OBO movement, and what is it?
Yeah. So what happened when it's actually a good kind of building on to that last point, when these two worlds collided, right? I was actually on a plane heading to Mexico, and I was meditating, and that was when it all kind of came to me. And I woke up and I realized, I said, what if we created something where the purpose of business today is to make money. In fact, our laws in the United States are written as such that the number one, by law, a C corporation, its number one duty is to its shareholders, right? The fiduciary duty, the shareholders, and that places the almighty dollar as, kind of number one, two, and three priority, which is, by the way, why we see a lot of the issues that we're seeing around destruction of the environment, focus on short-term earnings, and all of those, kinds of things, right? So the thought kind of came in my head, okay, what if we, borrowing from my path, my self kind of improvement and self-realization path, where the teaching there is that it's actually totally opposite. It's not about money or materiality. It's about fulfillment. It's about us getting reconnected with ourselves and, frankly, comfortable with ourselves, right? You close your eyes. I used that example earlier. A lot of us, we close our eyes and we're more uncomfortable. We got to run to go do something, right? Got to go run to work. I got to go eat something. I got to go take a drug or take an alcohol or take, something like that, right? So what if we turn the purpose of business around and said, okay, now the objective is not money. The objective is human fulfillment, right? Meaning, like, you in doing your job, you are doing this job so that you can get reconnected to yourself. So it's not in addition to this process of reconnection with yourself and self kind of realization, if you will, and deepest personal growth. It's not in addition to the work. It's through the work. Right. And so this concept kind of came to me. And as I started linking it to my own personal journey of personal growth and that zone of genius that I was talking about before, what I realized is, wow, this is actually what every great philosopher on earth has said. I mean, from Socrates to the Buddha, right? They've said that when we pursue fulfillment, right, the money and otherworldly prosperity will naturally come to us, right? As opposed to the other way around, which is what we've been taught, that you pursue money, and once you get it, then you'll be fulfilled. And so it was a very intriguing concept. And so I kind of cultivated it over the next few days as this thing came to me. And I realized, wow, this is actually something that is very, very big, and it's something that is necessary, critical. And it could be something that, is sort of the driving force behind saving humanity from itself. And I know that's a very big claim, but I think as we continue our conversation, we'll see why that's the case. A one-line descriptor of what the OBO movement is, really simple to kind of get it and grasp it fully, is if the Buddha were a CEO, how would he run the company? Like that's a very deep concept, right? I mean,
Right.
if we all just take a moment to pause and just think about that and sort of juxtapose that statement next to the global 2000, right, corporations that we have and who's running those corporations and what has it led to and what kind of behavior has it led to and what kind of, kind of world environment, if you will, has it led to. And then you contrast that with the case of Buddha with the CEO, how it worked. And really what one starts realizing when we ask that question is almost every business practice, okay, that exists in the conventional business world, almost everyone from my observation has to be literally blown up and recreated in a more human manner.
Mm-hmm.
So things like, for instance, transparency, right? We are suffering from literally a crisis of trust in our organizations today. And by the way, transparency, I mean, think about things like opacity, how the impact that opacity has on human trafficking and its role in corporate America and global corporate, kind of environments. But
Exactly.
if the Buddha were a CEO, right, transparency, would anything in the business be hidden at all?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
The answer is no, right? And
yeah,
so,
right.
and that's just one tenet, right? Transparency. There's so many other important tenets, right, in this movement that, in this sort of philosophy, right, in terms of how we would run a business, that come into play. And it literally transforms everything. And I truly believe that, when, I don't like to say if, okay, when this becomes the norm, I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetimes, but this will happen, right? Eventually, all businesses, this will be the normal way of operating in businesses. Then I dare say that I don't know if that'll get to the root cause of, business's role in human trafficking, but it'll get pretty close, because if you have this level of transparency, and when I say this level of transparency, I mean anything anybody wants to see at all, totally open book, right?
Sort of an extreme and complete transparency. And I think that will not only help stamp out trafficking, because we'll know who is involved in these corrupt activities, but also, people in our movement have been largely women, people of color, people that doors have been locked. There has been no transparency, so they can't get even paid a fair wage or have equity and opportunity, and all of these things would change if we had complete transparency, because people would have to explain themselves if if they weren't treating people fairly.
I'll tell you something really interesting. I'm so glad that you brought up this point, because that's the example that I actually use when I bring up transparency. I say take gender pay gaps, for example, right? Would they exist if we had the level of transparency that I'm talking about right now, okay? And you and I are in the same job, and I'm earning, X dollars per year, and you're earning 80% of X dollars per year. Like you just said, that's going to force it doesn't solve the problem right away, but it will force the conversation. And by the way, I'll tell you, the naysayers and the folks that are entrenched in corporate America and the way of doing things right now, when they hear this example, they come back and they say, oh yeah, but if we make everything transparent, then all these conversations around things like salaries are going to become a discussion, like a big discussion that we have to have. And I say to them, because they're saying, hey, we don't want to do that. We don't have time, right? We have to we got to pursue the almighty dollar, right? We got to keep going. We got to more increase profits and grow. And when they say, hey, we're going to have these conversations, I say, yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Perhaps this conversation is the one that needs to be had right now.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's really turned on its head, because the people that are my audience, for example, are people that are social workers and counselors and very low paid, whether you're white, black, male, female, you as a professional are not getting the recognition or the value. People aren't valuing what you do. And, some social workers and professional helpers are like only one paycheck ahead of the clients that they work with in poverty. So,
yeah, I know.
We have not been valued as a people, because we play in a system, we play in a game that's rigged, even though we may have the perspective that helping people is first. we're forced to participate in a game that's rigged against us. So I'm so
That's
glad that you are thinking of flipping it on its head.
absolutely. And I think once we get a system like this in place with some level of critical mass, it literally changes everything, right? Because I can tell you right now, I have the good fortune today of sitting in the place where I can do this and don't need money right now. I will eventually need money. I'm a householder. I have a wife and 11-year-old twins, but today I am okay, in 2020 and probably 2021. And so I can be in service, right, to develop this model. And people, the haters, right, will come out of the woodwork sometimes and hear that, oh, well, it must be nice for you, right, to be able to do this and not have to worry about, like the next year or two of bringing in money. You know what I say to them is I say, yes, it is nice. It is nice to be able to sit in this seat of privilege. Privilege is not the issue. Privilege gets a bad name. In fact, like the issue is the fact that there are underprivileged people, right? I want everyone to be privileged. The issue is not that some of us come and sit in a seat of privilege. The question is, what are those of us who are sitting in that seat of privilege doing for the remaining 90, 95, 99% of society now?
Exactly.
Right? We sit in the position to be in service now. And so that's my question to, the leadership of corporate America. It's like, okay, like you have enough now, right? I have the good graces and the good fortune of having enough. Okay. So now what am I going to do? And so for me, what that means is I'm waking up every day in service, building this OBO movement layer by layer every single day. And we're actually building organizations that operate on these principles. This isn't even just like, some conversation that you and I, Celia, are having. I mean, it's like we're actually building companies that operate on this model. And my plan is to push the boundaries out as far as possible and lead by example. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to take a penny until I get to a point where it's like, okay, actually, just to show that, hey, the CEO doesn't have to earn the most, right, in the business. In fact, the CEO could earn half of what a mid-level manager is. The CEO could earn nothing. Like here I am saying, I'm just going to put my service into this thing because I trust that when the day comes that I and my family need, that by pursuing life and pursuing the world in this manner, that it will come to me, that we will be provided for. And I dare say not only what I need, but what I want. Let's create it together. We can create this together, and we are creating it together.
Yes. I mean, that's where I am. I think in my life, it's no longer, I'm a PhD at a university, but no longer do I chase articles and grants and publications and research, just for the sake of it. But things like doing this podcast, removing the walls of the classroom. I no longer am interested in teaching 26 kids in a classroom to make money for the university. I'm interested in doing a podcast that removes the walls and educates people around the world. And no, it doesn't bring money. It doesn't bring, it's not pleasing to my university, but I think it's the thing that we need to do to be able to educate advocates and have them doing the best things and not siloed and forced to just get out there and do something, but doing the thing that's most effective by bringing people like you, people that are experts, to the podcast to educate other people. So I think it's what you're doing is love in action. Love is an action word, and that's what you're doing. And how can people get involved in your movement? How can they get in touch with you? What do they need to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best way right now, we are still building out, all kinds of different, I'll call it touch points, right? And ways for people to engage with us. And those are coming in the next, 4 or 5 months. But for now, it's really simple. One is through our website. It's at obomovement.org. That's OBO Movement, MOVEMENT.org. There's a sign up form there, and you can sign up and get plugged into what we're doing and potentially contribute. We also have, I wrote a book that was published in December called The OBO Premise. It's available on Amazon. So that's another way to kind of support the movement a little bit and learn more deeply about what it is that we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is, I mentioned we have some organizations that we're creating that operate on these principles. So the first business that we're going to be creating that is fully operating on these principles is a merchandise business. So like hoodies,
Mm-hmm.
jackets, t-shirts, etc. And we're in process of launching that business. We're expecting sometime in the first half of this year that will hopefully go up, and that'll be a way for us to then get this message out to the world and say, hey, world, please, will you support us? Because any money that we make in this business, which by the way, will be totally transparent, 100%, the answer is never no when you want to see
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
That money is not going to go in my pocket. It's going to go into the pocket of the movement, which is then going to fund initiatives and projects and businesses that operate, on these principles. So those are some things that we have going on that I'll call kind of our own initiatives. The other thing that I'd like to offer to the listeners of your podcast is, if you have a project that you're working on that you'd like to run on these principles, we'd love to collaborate with you and support you on doing that. And by projects, I mean, for example, maybe, figuring out your hiring processes for
Mm-hmm.
a nonprofit that you work at, or your performance review process. What's the better kind of human way of doing it? And the reason why I think this is potentially really of interest to the listeners here is because, you all are all already doing amazing work in the world, which is to say the physical world, the material world. I mean, you're doing work that is some of the most important work that exists, from my perspective, on the planet, full
Mm-hmm.
stop. And what we can do and what we can bring you is the ability to run your organization in a slightly different way. Because just as whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, what I'm talking about here in the OBO movement is a kind of operating system for the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even nonprofits can kind of move to this model. And when they do, what happens is the effects that you have in the world and the impact that you have in the world in the actual work that you're doing goes through the roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your organization becomes much more effective. Why? Because the work becomes for the deepest personal growth of the worker, right? And there are always ways to kind of, which is, right now that is, the workers are basically deriving meaning from the external work that they're doing. Hey, I'm doing great work in the world. I'm reducing a major menace to society, so to speak. And that's the external. What we would bring is the internal. Okay, so what practices can we bring you, the worker, so that, when you close your eyes, you feel happier, more peaceful, more joyous in your life. And that'll make you even more effective in the social work that you're doing. Right?
Yes, absolutely. I love the concept. I'm very excited. And I know, Dev, that you also kicked it off by looking for 100 people across the U.S. that you featured as doing the work, and then the money
Right.
came later, and I was one of those people. So I was really excited to know that, other people recognize that this is a good path to go down, worry about, making the difference, and then the money will come. And so you talked
Right.
also about, people are usually chasing the money, but what they're really, really chasing is an experience that they want to have. So
Right.
can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting, concept that I think is extremely powerful for us all as human beings to internalize and get. So, very often we think we're pursuing the external thing. Let's take money as an example, right? We think, okay, money is the goal. I want money. When I get money, then I'll be happy. When in reality, if you just take a moment to think about it, it's not the money, it's not the physical thing you want. It's not the money that you want. It's the experience that comes along with money, right? Money kind of delivers some sort of experience for you, and you want that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first step is to kind of recognize that. And when we take a step back and recognize, okay, yeah, you're right. It's not the physical thing. It's the experience that the physical thing brings. Okay, so then once we agree that, okay, it's the experience, right, that I am seeking, then I ask the question, okay, who is the one who is coming up with the experience in a given situation, right? And there's only one answer to that, right? It's you for you, and it's me for me. You're coming up with your experience right now, and I'm coming up with my experience right now. So then we ask the very important question, okay, if I'm the one who is in control and developing my own experience, then I ask the important question, am I able to generate that same experience regardless of whether or not the external circumstance or external factor, in this case money, is there? And when we start doing, some work, some introspective work, you start realizing the answer to that too is yes, right? And so then I ask people, I said, wouldn't you want to be able to develop that ability to generate that experience on your own, regardless of what? I'm not even saying don't pursue the money. I'm saying keep pursuing the money, keep pursuing whatever the external thing is. But alongside that, what if you had the superpower of being able to tap into that experience, whether or not the money is there? That seems like it's a lot more powerful, doesn't it? And in fact, what happens is when you develop that faculty, that capability to create that experience, well, then your pursuit of the physical thing, in this case money, actually becomes even stronger. So it becomes this rising tide sort of win-win, right? That because then it's sort of like, money is not guaranteed. Any physical thing is not guaranteed. I mean, you could go to the best school on earth, you could get the best job on earth, but there is no guarantee whatsoever, right, in this world that outcome of money is going to come to you. So what we are in control of is not the outcome, but rather the pursuit of the outcome. And the pursuit of the outcome is a combination of a volition that we have and an action that we take. Volition and action. And so then if volition and action are the two things that we are completely in charge of and can control, well, then it makes sense that those are the two things that we would really want to pursue with as much love as possible, right? Because if we have a pure volition and a pure action, a right volition and a right action, that will lead to the perfect outcome, always. Unless right plus right leads to wrong, right? The volition and the action lead to the outcome. And if it's the right volition and the right action, well, then it stands to reason that the outcome that comes to us will be perfect, even though the outcome may not be exactly what we wanted, right? Because we think, hey, I need this, I need that. But the reality is, how many times have you looked back in your life and said, the moment, boy, this is a real speed bump for me. And now you look back and it's like, wow, actually, that had to happen that way because, it opened up that door closing opened up these three other doors, right?
Exactly.
And so this is a kind of think of it as a structured way to take all of this, wisdom, you can call it, and infuse it into a way of working, right? Which is really kind of has a profound then impact, right, on people because, people these days spend 8, 10, 12 or more hours a day working, right? And that ratio of, the time spent working to the time resting is only going up, right? It seems. And by the way, every human being on earth, what's the one thing they do? They work, right? I mean, even if you're on the Upper East Side of New York and you still have like an organization in quotes that you're running.
Yes.
So that's why transforming work to be about the deepest level of personal growth for the worker presents such an amazing opportunity for us in this world, right?
Yes.
It's all about, it's like you're not writing the memo, like to write the memo. You are working on your self-acceptance and self-love by writing a memo.
Yes.
You're not giving the presentation and feeling nervous. You're actually working through your nervousness by giving a presentation. You see the difference, right? One is, the objective is the presentation. I got to get up on stage and give a killer presentation. That's the conventional world. In the OBO world, it's no. The objective is to work through your nervousness.
Yes.
And this presentation that you're giving, that's just the vehicle for you to achieve this deeper purpose. And lo and behold, an amazing thing happens when you pursue it that way, and your nervousness kind of releases a little bit. Your presentation actually quality goes through the roof. We all know that, right? I mean, how much better are you at when you do a relaxed presentation than when you do when you're uptight, right?
Yeah, I think you learn to transcend yourself. You learn to abandon this expectation that this external force is giving to you, and just go inside and speak to your heart and use your talent and your skills and transcend yourself emotionally. And then you will deliver what you need to deliver when you need to deliver it. I mean, I
That's
think,
exactly right. Yep.
yeah. So, Dev, what are maybe two of the most valuable things you think you could leave us with now? And then I hope people will connect to the movement because it is life transformational. But what would you like? What valuable things, what jewels do you need to
Yeah.
drop on us today?
So I just want to say that, I mentioned this earlier, but number one, I want to say that the work that you all are doing in this world is absolutely critical. And I can only imagine, at times how difficult it is, right? I mean, I literally only imagine, right? Because I sit here, my career has been in corporate America, far from, the day-to-day of what you guys do and read about and see. I mean, I can only imagine. And so, I want everybody to remember that you are doing absolutely critical work. And when the times are tough, just remember this, remember someone from the, I don't know how many folks from the corporate world really kind of recognize this, right? Or, but I just want everybody to know that. And it can get really hard, just like any job can get really hard, but these are particularly difficult. Mm-hmm. So that would be, number one. Number two, I would offer, and this is as much me speaking to myself, right, as it is to all of us together, on this call and on this recording, is that, especially after this week, which is a pretty intense week here in America,
yes.
That, hope, right, guys? Hope. Mm-hmm. It's really easy. And again, I'm speaking to myself first and foremost here. It's really easy, to get in that mode of despair, mode of, hey, this is just, what the hell is going on kind of a thing, right. And like, what's the point of it all? Like, why am I doing? Well, that's the whole thing, right? You are needed because of what's going on.
Yes.
Right? You are the hope. We are the hope, And so we got, and I can't emphasize enough how much I'm saying this to myself, because I've had a week, myself, right? Not only has the country had a week, like, it was one of those weeks, right? And so, I think that the more we can remember that, and the more we can choose to come together to support each other, because ultimately we're all in it for the same. I mean, those of us that are doing the kind of work that we're doing, it's like we're in it for the same goal. So the question really to me is not if we work together, it's how do we work together, right?
Yes.
To achieve those goals. And so I really hope that, this message, folks hear it and they come and reach out to us and see how we can collaborate, because I mean, everything that we've done in the movement so far in the last year and a half, from the book being written to the websites that are up to the businesses that we're launching, have all happened through simple collaboration. Someone hearing a message like this, from a conversation like we're having, and coming to me and coming to the movement and saying, hey, how about we do this? How about we do that? And there we go. Boom. There's a project. Now we're working on it together.
Yeah. So how can people mention that again, how people can get involved with the movement and
Totally.
learn about it? And where do they pick up the book again?
Yeah, so the movement website is obomovement.org, OBO Movement, MOVEMENT.org. And on there's a newsletter sign up form. You can also send an email if you want to get directly to us. Want to actually get involved. That's a newsletter sign up that's on the website. But if you actually want to discuss projects and things like that, a couple ways. One, you can send an email to info@obomovement.org. That's INFO, like information. You can also just reach out to me directly if you want on LinkedIn. I'm on there under Dev Tandon, DEVTANDON is my last name. So those are multiple kind of ways to reach out. And then on the book, it's available on Amazon in both Kindle and print format, and it's called The OBO Premise. So that's the OBO and Premise, PREMISC.
Thank you so much, Dev, and I'm so glad that we are collaborating together. And I'm going to encourage people to reach out to you, to read the book, to get a whole new perspective on how we should be running this world, and we can change the way we run this
Yes.
world. So thank you
It's an
so
honor,
much,
Celia.
Dev.
Thank you.
The OBO movement is an enlightening movement where everyone in the company or the organization is valued. And I don't mean just internally valued or appreciated, I mean financially valued and appreciated. Imagine if what you did in the anti-trafficking world were valued enough for you to make a great difference and make a great living at it. I recently did a survey of 150 advocates around the world who said they just want to be paid enough to take care of their bills, and they would stay invested in the anti-trafficking work. Equity is hard, and it will take a sustained and conscious effort to disrupt the system that for too long left too many behind. During this pandemic, we're learning more and more about the value of the everyday worker. If this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we rely every single day on the great service of people that we don't pay very well. When we want to help the poor, we offer them charity. When we want to help the working poor, we offer them minimum wage. Most often, we use charity and we use minimum wage to avoid recognizing the problem and finding the solutions for it. Charity and minimum wage becomes a way for us to shrug off our responsibility. But paying a minimal salary to people who do very hard work is not a solution to poverty. Those things only perpetuate poverty and place people in a position where they have to beg for what they need. Dev Tandon is building the OBO movement to bring about justice and equity to humanity. The objective is human fulfillment. If the Buddha were CEO, what would he do? And remember to attend the new Emancipation Nation Network today at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you miss it, it's okay. I'll send you a recording, that's a replay, so that you will know how to join the Emancipation Nation Network. Let's not just do something, let's do the best thing. If you like this episode of Emancipation Nation, please subscribe and I'll send you the weekly podcast. Until then, the fight continues.